Another good day of college football yesterday. We had a lot of blowouts in the top 10. We had three really close games. I wish they'd changed the scheduling around. They could have easily moved that Boston College and Missouri game to 3:30, especially if you have two games at noon that could be spread out, especially when there's still a lot of mid-major teams playing like your power of four. But anyway, let's get to the top 25 and we'll start with that 25 through 12. Starting with number 25, we have a new team in my top 25. That's Toledo. I put them at 25 because they absolutely destroyed Mississippi State yesterday, 41-17. And I've talked about this in the past just a little bit, but I think that gap after the top 10, that gap is starting to close, and that's great. That's what college football needs. We need a little more parity, and hopefully this 12-team playoff would definitely help with that. At number 24, I have Northern Illinois. They dropped just one, but they had a bye week. And then moving up to 23, they have not been ranked yet for me. That's Washington State. They beat Washington 24-19. That knocked Washington out of my top 25. But Washington State, they've beat Texas Tech and now Washington. So their top three games have been against power of four teams and not so much your mid-majors. At 22, Clemson had a bye this week. And then at 21, Louisville had a bye this week. And then at 20, Notre Dame moves up just a tad. They beat Purdue yesterday 66-7. So anytime you beat a school, I mean, people used to say like Vandy, somebody like that, they should get beat pretty bad. But no, these schools, these major schools can still easily recruit. So big win for Notre Dame after that loss to Northern Illinois. At number 19, it's LSU. LSU, they were down by 17 yesterday, and they came back and beat South Carolina 36-33. That was such a fun game to watch. I thought South Carolina was going to tie it up at the end. Man, I felt bad for that kicker. I mean, he barely missed that kick at the end of the game to send it to overtime. But LSU fought back. That true freshman running back really saved them. Durham, to me, he shined yesterday because they just kept handing him the ball, and that was smart. And they pulled out a big win and a huge comeback, being down 17. At 18, I have Michigan. They beat Arkansas State 28-18. Arkansas State scored late in that game, so the score looked a little better. Moving up to 17, I have Nebraska. They beat Northern Iowa 34-3. And then fall into 16, I have Utah. They beat Utah State 38-21, but USC beat Utah State 48-0. Cam Rising was hurt, so Isaac Wilson came in. But I'm not sure about this Utah team. They play Oklahoma State this week, so we'll get a good idea of kind of where they're at. At 15, I have Illinois continuing to move up. They beat Central Michigan 30-9. At 14, I had Oklahoma at 12 last week. They fall two spots. They beat Tulane 34-19. Oklahoma's another team kind of trying to find out where they're at as well. Well, they have Tennessee next week, so we'll definitely see where they're kind of falling in at. And then at 13, a big move up. I really wasn't believing in Kansas State, and I was a huge believer in Arizona. Well, both of them proved me wrong. Kansas State Friday night beat my 15th ranked at the time Arizona 31-7. Arizona scored first, and then Kansas State pretty much dominated after that. They had a big punt return in the middle of that 31 unanswered points, but golly, I really like Fafita. I like their coach that Arizona got when Jed went up to Washington, and I was just surprised. I didn't think Kansas was that much better than Arizona. I thought it would be a much closer game. And then at my number 12 spot, I have Penn State falling out. They had a bye, and I usually try to keep people kind of close to where they were, but there were many other teams that played really well this weekend, and I just thought they deserved to move up, and that's why I have Penn State falling back to 12. And there it is. There's my 25 through 12. Now we're going to go from 11 to 1. Starting with number 11, I have the Oklahoma State Cowboys. They had an impressive win against Tulsa this weekend, beating them 45 to 10. They move up 2 spots, mostly because Penn State was on a bye, and I thought they played Tulsa really well. Their AP rank is actually 14th. Their player of the game this week was Dejon Stribling. He's a wide receiver. He had 174 yards and 2 touchdowns, which is pretty good. And we're about to find out. They're starting to play some conference games coming up. Their next 3 games, they're going to prove me right or wrong, basically. They play ranked 16th Utah this weekend, and then they follow that up by going to Kansas State. So 2 tough games coming up, and then they'll have West Virginia in that 3rd week. I think this is going to start kind of showing you who is going to have a good shot of winning the Big 12, because those are probably 3 of the best teams currently in the Big 12. At number 10, I have the USC Trojans. They fall 3 spots back, mostly because of how well some other teams played this week. I know they're on a bye, and that kind of stinks, but I still think they're a top 10 team, and there were some really good teams out there that played this week. No player of the game because they didn't play. Their next 3 games, got to go to Michigan, got to go to the Big House. We'll see how Miller Moss handles Michigan. And then they'll play Wisconsin, who got destroyed by Alabama this weekend. And then they go to Minnesota. I'll be honest with you, I think they're going to blow through these 3 games. You saw what Texas did to Michigan. I still don't think USC is as good as Texas, but I still think they're going to go to the Big House and take care of business at Michigan. Unless Michigan can find a quarterback that can have a little better play, we'll have to see if they can even hang with the Trojans. But at this moment, I just have USC falling back just because of some other teams, and they're at number 10. Moving just 1 spot back, I have Missouri at number 9. They're ranked 8th last week. They're 7 in the AP. They defeated Boston College yesterday, 27 to 21. Actually gave their player of the game to their kicker. He had 4 field goals, including a 56-yarder before half. That is Blake Craig. Boston College had them 14 to 3, but Missouri, they refused to stop running the ball. They had 176 yards rushing. That really gave them control of the game. They had like 35 minutes to 24 time possession in this game. Their 3rd down efficiency was 11 out of 19. They still had 440 yards of offense compared to 298 with Boston College, and they only allowed Boston College 49 yards rushing. So the score, even though it was 27-21, they control most of the game. They just couldn't get a touchdown. That's why they had 4 field goals. I only bumped them back because other teams played better this weekend. But Missouri is still a force in the SEC. They're still going to make the playoff in my eyes. They're that good of a team. And we'll see how the SEC plays out. But I still think they can make a push. Can they beat like a Texas or someone? I'm not sure. Their next 3 games, they have Vanderbilt, and then 2 weeks after that, they go play Texas A&M, who looked a lot better against Florida, but everybody's looking good against Florida right now. And then in 3 weeks, they go play UMass. So no big games coming up for them. They should stay in this probably like 7 to 10 range rank-wise. Climbing up 2 spots for me, number 8, the Oregon Ducks. Their AP rank is 9th. They just beat the crap out of Oregon State yesterday. This is the Oregon team I thought we were going to see, in week at least 2. In week 2, like 2 weeks ago, but they finally are getting it going. Dylan Gabriel is still one of my Heisman candidates. I mean, I have him ranked 6th right now in my Heisman rankings, but he is still, he only needs that one big game to start really moving up. But they showed that they can play defense yesterday. That was the key. They held a team that's lost a lot of players. They haven't been taking care of these lower teams that they should be beating. Well, they finally did with a big statement win, and that's why I had them moved up. Their player of the game was Bryce Botcher. He had 11 tackles with 2 PDs. So their next 2 games, they go to UCLA and then they have Michigan State. But that third game, when Ohio State has to go out to Eugene, that will be a great game. And that both of them need this test to kind of see where they're at. This game at the beginning of the season is what I thought would determine who was going to win the Big Ten. I think they're still the top 2 teams in that league. You know how much I like USC, especially with that improved defense. But this, I still think, will really determine who's going to win the Big Ten. Going to number 7, I have the Tennessee Volunteers. They move up 2 spots for me as well. They were ranked 9th for me last week. They're AP number 6. They defeated Kent State 71-0. I'm actually going to give their backup quarterback, Gaston Moore. He went 4 for 4 for 94 yards and 2 TDs. So he got 2 TDs out of those 4 passes, which is pretty impressive. It was a huge win for Tennessee, but man, come on, Tennessee. This was kind of a classist move for me. Like, they are up 30-0, and they do an onside kick. If you need to practice the onside kick, I don't think this is the time to do so. You're killing Kent State already. I mean, I know it's the first quarter, but man, that's a classless move for me. That I've never been a big Tennessee fan. That just makes me don't rub it into a team's face like that. If I was the head coach at Kent State, I would be pretty upset with Heupel on that call. So I don't know. I will move on. Their next 3 games, they play 14th ranked Oklahoma this week, and they have to go out to Oklahoma. And then 2 weeks after that, they'll play Arkansas at home and then Florida. So Oklahoma should be a good test. We'll kind of see where both of those teams are as well. All these conference games, like I said, that are coming up is going to start hashing out this top 10 even more so. And then Arkansas's been playing well. And then poor Florida. Florida just looks horrible. I don't see how their coach makes it. I expect Napier to be fired in the next 2 games. They're playing so poorly. But that's all I have for Tennessee. Okay, falling all the way back to number 6 from my rank 3 is my Georgia Bulldogs. They have the AP rank. They actually fell to Texas for the AP. They fell from 1 to 2. They defeated, if you want to call defeated, Kentucky. I would say more just survived Kentucky 13-12. The player of the game would be Brett Thorson for me. He had 6 punts. Some of them were pretty bad. He flipped the field on a few, but he didn't drop the ball, and he didn't give them the ability to get a good return because, God, we needed it with a 13-12 game. I know we have a lot of injuries on the defensive line, but we couldn't get any pressure. Our touted offensive line couldn't move Kentucky that well. I mean, Kentucky outgained Georgia in this game, 284-262. They had 170 yards rushing. They're running all over that defensive line. So Georgia's going to have to get healthy to be able to make the playoff at this point. I thought they played so bad. I was worried already when you watch a team so much and you keep up with everything that's going on. That's why I had them ranked 3rd. I didn't have them at number 1 because I thought their secondary wasn't that good. But if you look, 284 yards is not a lot of yards. So, I mean, our defense still held them enough, just enough for Georgia's offense to get enough yardage to win this game. It really came down to that. That big turnover was huge for us. I mean, it helped us win the game. But Kirby has his hands full this week. He's going to have to get the team ready because we got a bye week. Maybe that can help us get healthy. But we have to go to Tuscaloosa in 2 weeks. And the way our defensive line, unless we get healthy, We couldn't contain Vandegrift. What are we going to do with Milrow? I mean, he can scramble and throw the ball while he's scrambling. That was one of Vandegrift's biggest problems yesterday. Once he started running, he didn't hold, like slow up to maybe throw the ball downfield. There is a Kentucky exposed us yesterday a little bit. Now, it could have been Vandegrift had been with Georgia for 3 years. He understood the schemes and probably passed it over to Kentucky because their defense was all over Georgia in the beginning. Maybe that can contribute to it just as much as the injuries. But right now, with Georgia's schedule, we'll have to see if they can maintain a top 5 ranking throughout the year. It's going to be tough. But they'll go out to Alabama in a few weeks. Then they'll have Auburn, and then they'll have Mississippi State, which the bottom two should be much easier games to win for the Bulldogs. But that's why I have them falling 6. They look so bad. That's why the AP had them dropping 2. All I can say is, hey, Kirby, you got 2 weeks. We know how good of a coach you are. Let's get it done. Moving up to number 5 from 6 for me is the Miami Hurricanes. They are AP 8th. They defeated Ball State 62-0 yesterday. Their player of the game was Xavier Restrepo. He had 47 yards with two TDs, if I can say it. He had a tough catch and run for a TD. I just really like the kid, and I'll have plenty of chances to talk about the other ones, especially their running back and their quarterback that I've talked about before. They keep moving up for me because Miami, I know they haven't played hardly anyone, but they look so good. When you're winning this big and playing so well, and it's not only that offense that's looking good, but the defense only gave up 115 yards. They only gave up 6 yards rushing and 109 yards passing. Ball State only went 1 for 12 on 3rd down, so they were basically stopping them every time. Now, there's only one thing Miami needs to do. They need to clean up their penalties. They need to get a little more discipline on a few things. But golly, when your defense holds someone to 115 and then you go for 750 yards, that's like Madden-like numbers. It's like some kid was just playing with Miami on a Madden game and was just lighting up Ball State. So let's take a look at their next 3 games. So they go to South Florida. Don't count South Florida out. You saw how well they played Alabama for 3 quarters. Virginia Tech is still a good football team. Cal in 3 weeks. They go to Cal in 3 weeks. They're 3-0, and that game's a long way from home. I mean, that is a huge trip for them. So let's see how well they handle the time zone change. This is the part that I just don't get with some of the moves some of the conferences have made. I'm going to keep talking about this. If you get a chance, go watch my video about how I would restructure all of the conferences and create 3 super conferences and then 3 in mid-major conferences. This is going to be like something I'm going to talk about soon about Ohio State and Oregon, but to have Miami to fly out to Cal just doesn't make any sense. This is the ACC, Atlantic Coast Conference, not the Pacific. They should still have the Pac-12 that is now the Pac-2, but we all know that. I'll stop plugging that video, but Miami's looking really good. I will like to see how they play this week against South Florida. We continue to have a few more teams move up because of Georgia. So at number 4, I have the Ole Miss Rebels. They go from 5 to 4. They're currently ranked 5th in AP. They defeated Wake Forest 40-6. Their player of the game was Jared Ivey. He's a defensive end. He had 6 tackles with 2 sacks. He's also a Georgia Tech transfer, and he's from Swanee, a nice product from the state of Georgia. Their next 3 games is Georgia Southern, Kentucky, and then they go down to Louisiana to play the Tigers, who are my ranked 19th. I mean, there's not much to say about Ole Miss. They've played Furman, Middle Tennessee State, and now Wake Forest. They hadn't had any good competition. Georgia Southern might hang with them for a quarter or 2. We'll see if Kentucky continues their trend of how well they played Georgia, even though they got destroyed by South Carolina, the week before. And then they have South Carolina. And then they have LSU, Oklahoma, Arkansas, Georgia. That schedule is about to get much tougher after that Georgia Southern game. So we'll see how well they play with all of these transfers they've got and see just truly how good this defense is. Moving up one more spot for number 3 is the Alabama Crimson Tide. They go from rank 4 to 3 for me. Their AP rank is 4. They defeated Wisconsin 42-10. Wisconsin kicked a field goal on probably their second drive, I think, in the first quarter, and then Alabama scored 4 straight touchdowns. It was 28-3. Alabama never looked back, and their player of the game was LT Overton. He's a defensive lineman. He had 6 tackles, a sack, and 1 forced fumble. Their next 3 games, like I said before, in 2 weeks, they host Georgia, ranked 6 right now for me. That will be a great test. And then they go to Vandy, and then they host South Carolina. So a lot of their bigger games are home games, which could help them. They played really well against what I thought would be, like a good middle tier Big Ten team. And to beat a team that's known for running the ball and a good defense 42-10 is very impressive. Wisconsin was still able to run for 149 yards, but they only could pass for 141. They had 2 turnovers. That always hurts when you're playing a team like Alabama. I don't think they're going to lose too much of a step. I think DeBoer's just that good. I mean, to come behind Saban like he has and to stay ranked, we'll see how well he makes adjustments against Georgia, because that was Saban's thing. He made so many adjustments against us. We would play them well. He would always make adjustments, always find a way to beat Georgia. So we'll see how DeBoer does that in 2 weeks. Staying at number 2 for me is the Ohio State Buckeyes. They had a bye this week, so they didn't play. I don't have a player of the game. Their next 3 games are Marshall at Michigan State, and then they host Iowa. You might wonder why I didn't move a team that had a bye, but I moved others. I just think they're that good. I'll keep saying this throughout the whole time I'm doing all the rankings. I think Chip Kelly's is making a huge difference for Day, because he can just let him completely handle the offense, and with all the recruits that they got on top of all the great transfers they received, they're going to be here for a little bit. At first, I just thought Oregon was going to be better. They play them in 4 weeks. I talked about it earlier. Oregon upset them a few years back, and I think they'll want to have revenge because Oregon came to them and beat them. So I think they're going to have a lot of concentration on that game. Lucky for them, they have no trap games. Marshall at Michigan State. Iowa has 0 offense, like I always talk about. I don't think they're going to have any problems with them. They should be able to roll into Oregon ranked 2nd or 3rd. Remaining ranked number 1 for my top 25 is the Texas Longhorns. They are now AP number 1. They passed Georgia because of Georgia's game against Kentucky. They beat the crap out of UTSA 56-7. Their player of the game is Anthony Hill Jr. He's a linebacker. He had 11 tackles with 1 tackle for loss. Their next 3 games, they have UL Monroe, Mississippi State, and then they have 14th ranked Oklahoma Sooners with the Red River Showdown now. But they lost Quinn Ewers yesterday. They don't think it's a serious injury, but look at what Arch Manning did. Gracious. He came in and just helped completely destroy UTSA. I had Ewers as my number 2 Heisman guy last week. With him getting hurt, that hurts him, of course, because he could have had a big game, especially with how Manning finished. But this team, they're number 1 in the land for a reason. After Mississippi State, they do have Oklahoma and Georgia. Oklahoma is played in the Cotton Bowl, and then they will host Georgia. But this team continues to roll. I actually thought with them losing some of their running backs that might hurt them, but no. I mean, this is next man up, especially at quarterback. As I said earlier, with Manning, this team is very impressive, and I don't see them losing the number one rank at least for the next 2 weeks. So that's my top 11, which leads to let's take a look at our 12 game playoff bracket. So we'll start at the top. Number one remains Texas. And then at 8, we'd have Tennessee playing Oregon. At number 12, I mixed it up this week. Washington State's going to get my group of whatever four now that you want to call it with their win over Washington. They moved to 23, which put them as my highest ranked non-Big Four team, overpassing Northern Illinois by one rank. So I guess the Pac-2, they're not considered a power conference anymore. Washington State would have a shot at that number 12. At number 5, I have Alabama. And then at 4, I still have Oklahoma State winning the Big 12. On the right side, at the top, we'll start with Miami winning the ACC. They'll get that bye for the 3 seed. USC would be the 11th seed. They would play the 6 seed Ole Miss Rebels. Moving down, you would have Mizzou Tigers as the 10 seed playing the Georgia Bulldogs as the 7th seed. And then the last bye in the bottom right hand corner would be Ohio State with the 2 seed. So that takes care of how the bracket would look like after week 4. Now let's look at my top 3 for Heisman. I've had one change. I have Ashton Genty, the running back for Boise State, moving up to number 3 due to Quinn's injury. He's only played 2 games, and he already has 459 yards rushing with 9 TDs and 155 yards receiving. He had 267 yards rushing against Georgia Southern and 192 against Oregon. So I have him moving up to number 3 in my rankings. Moving up to the second rank, I have Cam Ward. He has 1,035 yards passing with 11 TDs and only 1 interception, and he has a 73% completion rate. This is absolutely showing a huge pickup by the Hurricanes, getting such a quality quarterback through the portal, and I don't see him slowing down anytime soon due to the competition that they will continue to play. Not moving as my main pick for the Heisman is Travis Hunter. Yesterday, he had 13 receptions for 100 yards and 2 TDs. He also had 5 tackles and 1 pass defense. I don't care what you think about Dion or his son, or how his son didn't shake the guy that was running his mouth on Instagram's hand after the game. But Travis Hunter is still the best player in the nation. And I'll keep saying this should be about the best player and not the best player on the best team. It should be the best player. But right now I have it as Travis Hunter. I was thinking about adding a game of the week, but I decided not to because it's kind of tough this week. But I will tell you, Friday night, Illinois plays Nebraska on Fox. That should be good. You know USC is going to the big house. I mentioned that Utah and Oklahoma State play. Tennessee and Oklahoma play. There's some really good games out there. Also, watch that Miami South Florida game. I would really like to see how well they play against South Florida. As always, thank you for listening to Spider Red. Find someone to watch a game with. Celebrate your team. Later.